All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. There was a little hiatus for me this week. I was a little under the weather, but I am back in the saddle and I got plenty to talk about on this one. And the subject is the Major League Baseball winter meetings. Now, money was being dished out at a fast and furious pace at MLB's winter meetings, as some teams are hopeful that they now have what it takes to be a World Series contender. Some of the highlights that we saw from this past week in San Diego: the judges' chambers will remain in the Bronx. And I'm talking about the 9 year, $360 million deal that the Yankees and their all star slugger, Aaron Judge, came to an agreement on. Now, of course, the big talk during the season in New York was the Judge turning down the Yankees' initial offer of $213 million. I talked about it then that Brian Cashman, wanted to try to make it look like, Judge was being greedy and have the fans and the media turn on him. But then once Judge started slugging those home runs last season, the tide really turned rather quickly. And I talked about this several times throughout the MLB season. I said that it was going to cost the Yankees at least $300 million, especially if another team got involved in the negotiations. And we saw that happen with the San Francisco Giants, who had a very hard push to try to get Judge. We also saw the San Diego Padres come through the back door and make a push towards Aaron Judge as well. But he decided to remain in the Bronx on a 9 year, $360 million deal. And for me, this was a no brainer that it had to get done from the Yankee standpoint, because the backlash from both the media and the fans in the New York area, if the Yankees, the almighty Yankees, who are always spending money, would have allowed one of their own to just walk out the door scot free because they didn't want to pay him. Oh, that backlash would have been tremendous, directed at both Brian Cashman and, of course, team owner Hal Steinbrenner. Nonetheless, the Yankees got it done. He is the face of the franchise. He is their best player. And now he is going to be in pinstripes for the remainder of his career. Last Saturday, I did talk about Jacob DeGrom and his 5 year, 185 to leave the New York Mets and go to the Texas Rangers. It's a scenario where, and when you're the Rangers and you're a team that's been down for so long, you got to go out there and try to find a way to make a splash, get on the back sports pages, show teams and show people around baseball that you're willing to be a contender. You got to go out there and overpay. They did overpay for DeGrom, but hopefully for their sake, he can be a guy who can not only can lead their rotation, but also be a leader for this team as a whole, as the Rangers look to make some noise in the American League. But of course, with a guy like DeGrom, the big question is, can he stay healthy? We got to wait and see. Now, the San Diego Padres continue to spend. We saw the Padres go out there and sign former Boston Red Sox shortstop Xander Bogaerts to an 11-year deal for $280 million. And for Bogarts, he had a tremendous run with the Red Sox, which included helping that organization win a pair of World Series championships. But the writing was on the wall this past season when Bogarts and the Red Sox failed to come to an agreement on an extension. He opted out of his contract. And when it's all said and done, he is now heading west, and he's going to be a part of one of the deepest lineups in baseball when you think about Juan Soto, Manny Machado, and then eventually Fernando Tatis Jr. once he returns from suspension as well. Now, the New York Mets, they were obviously sad to see Jacob DeGrom leave town, but they didn't spend any time sulking. We saw the Mets be very busy. Not too long after the news broke of DeGrom going to Texas, The Mets went out there and got another future Hall of Famer and a multiple Cy Young Award winner, as Justin Verlander is now coming to the National League. The Mets and Verlander came to an agreement on a 2-year deal for $86 million. He gives them another frontline starter in their rotation. And it's also a reunion because you think about the time that Verlander and Max Scherzer had together atop the rotation for the Detroit Tigers. And of course, last winter was when the Mets went out there and spent big on Max Scherzer. This time around, it's Justin Verlander. That was not the only pitcher that the Mets signed. They also picked up a lefty in Jose Quintana for 2 years and $26 million. We also saw them get a quality reliever in Dave Robertson. Of course, Robertson was a part of the Phillies team that went to the World Series last year. You can never have enough pitching in October, especially in your bullpen. And the Mets are bringing in Robertson, a guy who knows how to pitch in New York in October. Of course, he had all of those years with the New York Yankees. And then, of course, one of the biggest moves that the New York Mets made is bringing back Brandon Nimmo. To me, I thought when the offseason began, I thought that it was a no-brainer that DeGrom was going to be back with the Mets and that Nimmo was going to be the guy who was going to leave, because I figured that there were going to be teams that were going to make Nimmo the offers that he could not refuse, and the Mets weren't going to match it. But once DeGrom left, the Mets really hunkered down and took care of their business. They feel like Nimmo is their center fielder for years to come. The bottom line is he's a good locker room guy. On top of that, he's a guy who has the potential to be a leader. He works hard and he has a good work ethic. And I think all of that factors into this deal. 8 years, $162 million. But at the end of the day, I think when the deal is done, the Mets really could have gotten off cheap with this one, in my opinion. I really think it's a quote unquote team friendly deal the way the money is being thrown around. But now you have your guy in center field for the years to come if you're the Mets. And then on top of that, you have a guy who has a potential to finish his career with the Mets, and that's something that this organization has lacked for a very long time, as far as guys being able to start their career with the Mets and end their careers with the Mets. Only a few guys been able to have done it, and now a guy like Brandon Nimmo has the opportunity to add his name to this list. TFX, what's going on, my man? Good to see you feeling better. Thank you so much. Been under the weather, man. Do you think the Yankees signing Judge this year paves the way for the Mets to sign Otani next year? We got to wait and see. It's a possibility. My biggest thing is in regards to Shohei, I want to see who the new owner or who the new ownership group is. That's going to be a big thing because you're talking about an Angels team that is in a big market. And I mean, you're the LA market. It's the second biggest market in the US. So for me, it comes down to who's going to be in that ownership group. Are you going to get a guy like Steve Cohen who's willing to spend money? Or are you going to get somebody who basically wants to shop at the bargain basement? That is going to be the biggest thing. So let's see who takes over the Angels team, and then we'll take it from there. But I'll tell you like this, if the Angels are not, and I repeat, not going to keep Shohei long term, it's really going to hurt the value of this franchise because you have Mike Trout on this team, yes, but you look at what Shohei does, not only as a hitter, but also as a pitcher as well. And he brings such a level of excitement with him to the ballpark every single day. And for an Angels fan base that has not had a lot to cheer for in recent years, because you got to go back to 2014 to find the last time that the Halos made the playoffs. You got to give them something to go off of. And for them, if they're not going to keep Shohei and they allow him to get to the open market as a free agent, it's going to be a bidding war. I'll tell you like this: if you're the Mets, I think they would make a move on Shohei next year because obviously already Steve Cohen has said, you know what, money's not a thing. The heck with the luxury tax. The Mets payroll is going to be well over $300 million for next season, and they're still not done adding pieces. So the bottom line is, if the Mets are in play, and of course, 5 years ago, who would have thought that we'd be having this conversation? But if the Mets are in play now for a potential free agent, obviously it's going to drive the market up. So if you're Shohei and the Angels aren't going to take care of you, especially with a new ownership group, you want to hit that free agent market because you get a team like the Mets involved, even potentially the Yankees. At this point, maybe I doubt the Yankees would make a run at Shohei just due to the fact of, you got Judge, you got Stanton, you got Cole. They're also stuck with the contract to Josh Donaldson. That's a whole nother story for another day. But nonetheless, it's a scenario where Shohei is going to command a huge payday on the open market. Now, the Philadelphia Phillies, this is another team that we saw them open the vault. They gave Trey Turner, the former Dodgers shortstop, 11 years for $300 million. We saw the former Mets starting pitcher Taiwan Walker get $72 million for 4 years, and then the former Red Sox reliever and Matt Stram got 15 million for 2 years. And this is a good thing right here because the Phillies got to the World Series last year and they're not resting on their laurels. They're saying, you know what? We got to go out there and we got to try to find a way to take that next step. You make that upgrade. You get a guy in Trey Turner, and Trey Turner is what a shortstop can be because this guy gets on base. On top of that, he steals bases. And in this analytics driven era, you still need players who can go out there and get on base and are a threat to steal. And I'll tell you like this is going to make life so tough, so much tougher for the other four teams in the NL East. Of course, Turner began his career with the Washington Nationals, was a part of their World Series championship team, and now he's looking to do it again for another team in the NL East. And now, of course, he's reunited with Bryce Harper, this time in the city of brotherly love. Taiwan Walker is going to give the Phillies some depth in their rotation. The Mets weren't going to give him $18 million a year, but the Phillies were willing to do that. And he can be a very serviceable 3 or 4 guy in your rotation. Masataka Yoshida signed with the Boston Red Sox, and the Red Sox had a very interesting offseason. They bring in Yoshida. They also went out there and signed Kenley Jansen to shut down the ninth inning. But excuse me, at the rate that the Red Sox are going, I don't think they're going to have that many games to save this year. Um, for me, and I said it during the season, the Red Sox really needed to wave the white flag and have a fire sale. They did not do that because you knew that you probably weren't going to be able to keep Bogarts long term. And then I said it before, the Red Sox needed to part with JD Martinez. They didn't do that because they could have gotten something back from him at the trade deadline because there were a lot of teams out there that needed a bat in their lineup, and the Red Sox could have gotten something back. I don't know what's going on here with the Boston Red Sox at the current moment. This is a team, to me, they just have all of the signs of being a squad, an organization rather, that's in flux. So let's see what the Red Sox next move is going to be. Wilson Contreras is staying in the National League Central as it's going to be $87.5 million for the next 5 years for him with the St. Louis Cardinals. And of course, Contreras, there was a big possibility of him getting traded this past season at the trade deadline, as a lot of teams were in the mix to acquire him from the Chicago Cubs. It didn't happen. Now you go to the St. Louis Cardinals, and I think this is a prudent move by the Cardinals. You have Yadier Molina, who has solidified your catching position for more than 15 years. And now you bring in another quality backstop in Wilson Contreras. And this is how the Cardinals do things. And these are moves right here why the Cardinals are always in contention to win the NL Central. And of course, if you win your division anything can happen in the postseason. So I love this move by St. Louis. It's a big move, and it's a move that got looked over by some people. But I guarantee you, come stretch run time next season, as well as in October, we're going to be looking back on the importance of Wilson Contreras going to St. Louis. Jamison Teon going to the Chicago Cubs, 4 years, $68 million. The Cubs are spending money once again, and not only in Teon, also they took a flyer on outfielder Cody Bellinger for 1 year and $17.5 million. There are some people, and obviously the Cubs are a part of that mix, that are hopeful that Cody Bellinger can find a form that once upon a time made him a National League MVP. But ever since the injury, he has not been the same guy. Will a change of scenery help him? We got to wait and see. Josh Bell to the Cleveland Guardians for 2 years and $33 million. We saw Bell have a solid year for the Nats. He got traded to the Padres. He was a big part of their run to the NLCS. And I'll tell you right now, this is a move right here that's going to fly under the radar, because you look at this Cleveland Guardians team. They are a young team, and they have a solid blend of veterans in that lineup. And if you look at the Guardians, they're a team that you don't want to face in the postseason. They put a scare and a half into the New York Yankees this past October, and it was one of those scenarios. If the Guardians had themselves another bat, they probably would have won that series. So, how do you fix that problem? You bring in a guy like Josh Bell, a solid switch hitter who can hit the ball out of the yard. And this Guardians team with Josh Bell is going to be very formidable once again. The Houston Astros signing Jose Abreu last week is not getting talked about enough. A veteran at first base. The White Sox let him get out of town. Abreu is a guy that will come in and fit in with the Astros organization. And moves like this are why the Astros are consistently in the mix to win the World Series. Now, there are still some big time free agents out there on the market. Carlos Correa did not get signed at the winter meetings. There's talks about the Yankees being in on Correa. We got to wait and see. I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe if the Boston Red Sox went out there and made a move on Correa. Or what about a team like the Los Angeles Dodgers, who lost several guys in free agency, or the San Francisco Giants, who came up short altogether in their pursuits of Aaron Judge and Brandon Nimmo. So we got to wait and see on what happens with Correa. Carlos Rodon, the quality left-handed starter. I thought once upon a time he was going to be destined to be with the Mets. I doubt it at this point. The Yankees, I think, are still a strong possibility for Rodon, as well as the Red Sox, maybe even the Chicago Cubs. I mean, Rodon has pitched in the Windy City before, of course, for the White Sox. And then you have two teams on the West Coast, and the Dodgers and Giants, that definitely need help in their rotations as well. Some other names to keep an eye on: Andrew Benintendi, JD Martinez. I'm surprised he has not been scooped up at this point, but he is still a veteran bat that can come in and be a DH and provide some depth for a lot of teams out there that want to make a postseason run next year. Dansby Swanson, the former Brave shortstop, where is he going to end up? Chris Bassett he put together a solid 2022 for the New York Mets, the 15-game winner. Somebody's going to pay him, may not like overpay him per se, to be a part of their rotation. But Chris Bassett is definitely going to find a home. And then Gene Segura, the former Phillies second baseman, where is he going to end up? He still hits for contact. Some defensive miscues at time, but I think that Gene Segura is going to find a new MLB home much sooner rather than later. Now, it was a quiet winter meetings for both the Los Angeles Dodgers and the San Francisco Giants. The Giants went out there and they tried to make some moves, and I expected the Giants to be very active because they have money to spend. Just didn't work out so far. So let's see what's going to happen for the Giants over the rest of this offseason. And in the Dodgers, it's been a while since we've had, and winter meetings go by without the Dodgers making some type of big splash spending. Maybe the Dodgers are trying to scale it back now for once. We got to wait and see. But it just doesn't seem right to not have the Dodgers at the forefront of the spending spree in the off season. Now, with all of that being said, who are the legitimate World Series contenders heading into spring training? For me, I still, have the Astros in the mix because these guys know how to get it done. They're bringing up some young talent already. We've seen that talent contribute to their World Series championship this past October, and the Stros are still going to be the team to beat. The Atlanta Braves, who were quiet at the winter meetings, are still a very formidable team. They took care of a lot of their young talent and locking them up to deals already. So the Braves are going to be not only right back in the mix in the National League East, but to win the World Series as a whole for next season. The Phillies, the defending NL champs, only got better. And this is going to be a very good team next year for Rob Thompson. The San Diego Padres. This is a team right now, you can call them the Dodgers South. They went out there and spent the money on Bogarts. They know that Manny Machado can opt out of his deal soon. The real money on Fernando Tatis's contract does not kick in for several years, and then Juan Soto. So what's going to happen there? But nonetheless, the Padres are a loaded team, and they're going to be in the mix once again as well, as are the New York Mets, because you look at their pitching, and yes, they lost the ground, but you get another proven veteran pitcher in Justin Verlander. You got Max Scherzer, so it's one of those where they bring back Nemo. I still say the Mets need to get their hands on another power bat in the middle of their lineup to have a legitimate push to get that World Series championship. But nonetheless, the Mets are definitely in contention. So it was a busy winter meetings. Of course, Scott Boras was front and center as he's always looking to get top dollar for his the players that he represents, and rightfully so. And of course, the New York Mets under Steve Cohen are showing that it's a new day and we're spending money, and we're going to spend it on the people who we feel are going to be able to give us a championship. So you look at it, Aaron Judge left San Diego a happy man. Uh, Definitely Xander Bogarts went to San Diego a happy man, and he's now going to pitch a tent there for the next decade or so. Brandon Nimmo is going to be a very happy man in Queens to the tune of about $20 million per year for the next 8 years. And of course, Trea Turner getting the bag from the Philadelphia Phillies. These were just some of the many highlights of MLB's winter meetings. Now let's look ahead to the rest of the offseason with free agency. And of course, before you know it, pitchers and catchers will be reporting. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, saying take care. And thanks again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube.